Greetings, fellow humans. I am Hugh.
And I am Man.
And together we are definitely not
Two
kobolds in a trench coat. We enjoy human activities, such as paying taxes,
having existential crises,
and RPG horror stories. Let's see what we've got today.
Today, we have a player who tried to instigate colonization after failing to be a murder hobo, party members who rage quit because of the inevitable consequences, and a DM who ruins a game with his critical role obsession.
Player plays an outsider and attempts to colonize the world. By Reddit user ForeverDM247. Hello, it's me again, back for another player horror story. This time in a 5e game of only monks. The game was fairly straightforward. The players are monks in a monastery in a solitary island far from the world and its industry. Ankeg-like bugs infested the mountains which compose said islands and were a constant struggle for the monastery, an overarching theme of the campaign. The campaign had 6 players. We had sessions 0 and 0.5 as is tradition, and one of the players, we'll call him Outlander, wanted to make a character concept. While all the characters played as students of the monastery and lived in the island all their lives, he wanted to play as someone who is not native to it and actually really new. The character was a newcomer, and despite playing a monk, had no direct association with the monastery.
I think it's an interesting idea of having a party composed entirely of one class. I don't know how that would work, and it might make balancing combat rather interesting. It's a fascinating concept, nonetheless.
It works from a scenario standpoint, like monk is a class you can build this around. You could also have a wizard school. You could have one set in a Dragon Age style universe where everyone's playing a sorcerer or wizard, trapped within the circle of magi, or paladins who are part of the Templars. There's a lot of different ways you could make that kind of work as an interesting narrative.
Well, I could see a whole party of paladins, but I would advise against a whole party of wizards because of how wimpy they are. You might accidentally kill all of them in one go.
Yeah, you fight the dragon, it sneezes, 6 dead wizards.
I mean, that would be kind of funny, but also a very short campaign.
We went over the ground rules. Things like, you understand that you will not be welcomed in the monastery usually. You will have to build up your reputation. Frankly, we had a lot of talking before I felt comfortable allowing his character in. He accepted to be an outsider and mainly have contacts in the port town outside the monastery, mainly trading goods made inside the monastery for profit that in turn gets shared with the monastery in the form of supplies, etc. He was very well regarded in the town and often had special privileges, as many town members were former monks who seeked profit over their religious ways. The problem was, Outlander didn't like the flip side of that coin. He hated that the monks were not welcoming to him, he wouldn't be able to join the players in certain sacred areas, and would have to talk to other NPCs outside of that area. I tried my best to balance things for him, as I never wanted players to feel unwelcome from the actual game, even if their character was unwelcome from some parts of the world in-game. He was offered to join the monastery many times by people who said he helps around so much that he'd be a good member, and even started seeing himself being allowed in certain areas and generally being accepted. That was until he killed one of the monk leaders.
So you have a campaign that's centered around monks in a monastery, and somebody who doesn't want to play a monk in the monastery, but still be a part of the campaign. And then he's surprised when people are unfriendly to him, but then when he gets offered to join the monastery, he refuses.
But it's not that he refused to join the monastery, it's just when he started to look like he had an opportunity, he killed a leader of the monastery. So he acted like he didn't want to be in there despite being given the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like killing the monk leader is kind of a refusal in and of itself.
Or at least it shows you a sinister intent and not someone to be trusted inside the monastery.
Either way, you're not getting in. He just screwed himself. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? You're trying to join the campaign, right?
He chose a character that meant he would have a slightly different path to the rest of the players, but he still got to be a part of it. However, inevitably that would lead to integration with the monastery, otherwise it just wouldn't work long term.
Yeah, I've heard of these players before wanting to join, but then don't actually join the party. They'd be like, oh no, that's not what my character would do. They just want their own adventure. Play a video game, dude.
He was one leader who hadn't quite warmed up to him. He decided that he will speed up the integration process by killing him. Other players warned him that they would tell on him if he did, and they wanted nothing to do with this course of action, but he did not care. He openly told them he would do it, and indeed went through with it. After being banished from the monastery, he decided that he will literally attempt to contact other nations and try to colonize the island, even sending letters referring to himself as future colonial governor. He became very upset when no one would accept his offers and started accusing me of railroading him. I told him the island was useless to other nations, and the only reason the monks were even on it is for religious reasons. He proceeded to tell me that he will start fabricating things to make it seem like a better offer, and he did. He claimed the island had many magical and mundane resources, which caused some explorers to come inspect it. Eventually, he was sent multiple letters warning him that his actions will result in his death if he does not stop. It got to the point that even his own town allies were backing off him, saying he was causing too much trouble. He ended up trying to burn down the port and died when the guards came to investigate and were able to overwhelm him. What followed was the most unhinged tirade ever, where I was called the N-word multiple times, my players were called cowards, and using every mental condition under the sun as an insult to them. When he was banned, he actually attempted to send me malware and ransomware files every day for a straight week, disguised as apology Word documents and PDFs. Safe to say he was not welcome in a lot more than just the monastery after that.
Yeah, honestly, I think this player should have just played a video game, not gonna lie. This is, I'm the only player in this scenario kind of situation and had no regard for the other players or the DM or the campaign. It's just, no.
This was essentially, I can't have my way, so I'm going to try to burn the world down. I'm taking the ball and going home, however you want to phrase it. This is a toddler throwing the tantrum because they couldn't have their way, so they want to spoil it for everyone else.
Just wants to take his toys and go home. Only he didn't bring the toys in the first place, so he just wanted to burn the toys.
What he should have done was advertise the island as having tea.
And spices.
That's how you get colonized.
I think he might have tried, because he advertised it as having things that it didn't have.
Definitely not. If he'd advertised it as having tea and spices, then he would have literally had his imagination invaded by Britain. That's how it works.
The players who believed that in-game war crimes shouldn't have in-game consequences, by Reddit user Athena's Owl 743. I've had more than my share of RPG horror stories, but now that 2 campaigns are wrapped up completely, one sort of died out, and I left the 4th because my playstyle was not compatible with that of the DM and some other players, I'll share this one. I ran a 4-year-long campaign as a DM that recently wrapped up. We started with 10 players. The game didn't have a high player attrition rate per se, but we did have a few players drop out due to work schedules, family issues, and life in general. The game started with Curse of Strahd, and for the most part everything went pretty well. After Strahd's defeat and the PCs leaving the Pocket Dimension, they got back to the Sword Coast and I started tying in backstories and playing out character arcs with homebrew stuff. One player, who had some psychic powers, started invading mines for information, despite the fact that other ways to get it existed. Notably, she did this to a CPTSD-afflicted cleric of Kelamovor, who watched his best friends, lover, and siblings get torn apart in a massive horde of undead, and then forced alcohol down his throat when he reacted negatively to this. The character spent the rest of the arc being hunted down by the paladins of Kelamovor for this.
Oof, that's a brutal way to use that.
I mean, I'm assuming that the people that the cleric saw get devoured by undead was a bunch of different people, not all the same person.
One would hope, but with some people in these stories, there's every possibility it is all one person.
Yeah, the forcing the alcohol down the throat is sort of the cherry on the top.
Yeah, it does sound like they're abusing their powers a bit, and then why are they just forcing alcohol down their throat? Is it just kind of like, oh, you have trauma? Alcohol will help with that. Alcohol is not a good coping mechanism. We just don't have better ones available, okay?
The other was a mage. When threatened by a pair of ancient white dragons for casting fire spells in their cave after making friendly contact and later getting trapped in the cave by an avalanche, his reaction was, "I'm gonna hold an action and cast 8th level fireball at their hatchlings." This was after having a discussion about how these 6 hatchlings were identical and that there was some weirdness going on because of twins, triplets, etc. are when 2 eggs are hatched at once, not when one dragon is hatched out of different eggs multiple times by the dragons themselves. Then the psionic uses his skill to switch places with the threatened mage when he gets trapped and angering the dragons further. Needless to say, their faces started to appear on Wanted Dead t-shirts and posters with a massive reward. The mage doubled down when the dragons tracked him down to his ship on the water and attacked. He teleported away, leaving the rest of the party to deal with the dragons. When they were eventually outclassed and overwhelmed, the paladin walked away in anger, refusing to protect them from the consequences of their own actions. They agreed to a trial, where they were punished by Kelmivor himself, in a way that limited their magic abilities. One left the game the next session, never to return. The other suffered a character death and decided that he was done because he felt unfairly targeted by the dragons and the others that he offended. We finished out the game, but these instances left a bad taste in my mouth and caused me to step away from being a DM for a while.
I mean, this is some pretty basic D&D no-nos. If you kill or threaten the dragon's babies, of course they're going to come after you with a vengeance. You're literally asking for it. What did these players expect?
And you're killing a dragon's hatchlings after you've made friendly contact with them and after a little crumb has been spilled by the DM being like, ooh, there's something weird going on with these hatchlings. Maybe you want to check that out. You literally just killed a whole plot point.
Exactly. The DM pointed out that these were important to the plot and they're like, nah, murder time.
Obviously, they're going to suffer some consequences. And I mean, they're lucky that really they only just got their magic abilities limited. They got off easy for that.
Yeah, that's kind of being put to death or being sent on some suicidal redemption mission type stuff. I don't blame the paladin for piecing out on that one.
Yeah, and it's also like really bad form of this guy to upset the dragons and then peace out and teleport away when the consequences start to catch up with themselves and leave the rest of his party to deal with the consequences of his actions.
To be honest, going back to the cave, if I was the psionic, I would have not swapped places with the wizard to get them out. At that point, you leave them to their fate.
Absolutely. You want to piss off the dragons? Go for it. Have fun with that. See you in the next life.
Paladin had the right idea. The rest of the party should have really followed suit and just turned over the wizard to the dragons at that point.
It's just really funny to me when players do stuff like this, and then there's consequences for them that are reasonable and normal, and then they're like, I'm being unfairly targeted.
It all sounds very reasonable and even-handed from the DM. The players deserved what happened. It sounds like perfectly valid, balanced consequences to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I said, I think he actually got off easy.
DM ruins game and group trying to emulate Critical Role by Reddit user RockHard's. This was back when Critical Role had just started their second campaign. The group was the DM, me, and 4 other people. The DM and one of the players were really into Critical Role to the point that the first half hour of every session was just the 2 of them talking about Critical Role. Eventually, the DM starts introducing characters from the series, starts telling us what we should do, because they did that in Critical Role, and starts trying to copy Matt Mercer's particular DM style to the point I wasn't having fun, and I felt like I had no agency, and our actions in-game had no point, since he'd attempt to retcon things or ignore things to get a particular outcome. Eventually it came to a head when one of the guys dropped out, and that was a push for me to say the same. I love playing, but I'm not a huge fan of Critical Role, and I have no interest in blanketly copying other people's stories. DM reacted badly and went on a tirade about how he's playing D&D properly and we're ruining the game for him and that one other player. I tried to tell him that he's ruining the game for all players except one, and she was getting clear favoritism because she was going along with it and attempting to recreate scenes from the series. Even tried to explain that Matt Mercer has his own style, he has years of experience, probably took lessons in acting and improv, and has a team of people to help him with writing, and that's his career. He just accused me of being jealous of Matt Mercer and not knowing what D&D really is. Saw him post in a Discord server not long after he was explicitly looking for people who watch and like Critical Role. Hope you found a group of like-minded people to play with. He was a great DM before he decided that Matt Mercer is the only standard of DMing.
So another party ruined by the Matt Mercer effect. And that really sucks because as a fan of Critical Role, it really sucks when I see people being like, oh, that's what Critical Role will do, so that's what we want. And then everybody stops having fun.
Yeah, the point is to create your own adventure, not to recreate someone else's. Obviously, you have source books, and that's a set campaign, but you make it your own within that.
Well, and even as a fan of Critical Role, when I play D&D, I play it my own way because I don't want to replay Critical Role. Even when we were in that Tal'Dorei campaign, we weren't doing it like Critical Role because it was more fun to do it like us.
Yeah, you got the Taldore campaign, we played that for a little bit, and you do your own thing. At the end of the day, Critical Role is D&D, but it's also a show by professional voice actors, and at this point, professional D&D players with a professional DM. It's not the way D&D plays out for the rest of us, and that's okay.
That's the point of D&D, is to make it your own and to make it personalized. And some of the best moments are when people just go completely off script and do the weirdest, wackiest, most creative stuff. And that's what makes it really enjoyable for everybody else. I mean, as long as you're not being a murder hobo or stealing the spotlight.
Well, as we all know by now, there's quite a long list of things you definitely shouldn't do on a D&D table, but they're all kind of obvious and things you also shouldn't do within general society.
Do seduce the dragon, don't be a murder hobo.
Considering the closest thing to a dragon in the real world is a Komodo dragon, I strongly advise not trying to seduce them.
Wild shape into a Komodo dragon and seduce the Komodo dragon.
But you can do, but only once. Hey man.
Hey, what?
What kind of bread do dwarves make?
I don't know.
Shortbread. And with that, we have definitely not been two kobolds in a trench coat. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make the necessary sacrifices to Tiamat. We'll see you next time.